But just this happened a few hours ago. The Supreme Court ruled that Biden's Department of Justice has wrongly prosecuted hundreds of Americans for peacefully protesting on January 6th.
Yo, this is extremely good news. This is good news. I'm going to bring Benny Johnson to the channel for this one. The Supreme Court has discovered that the Jan 6th, I can't even say it online, speech is being censored, and this channel has gotten so many yellow check mark. I have to be extra careful. Well, I don't want to lose my channel because I love my people, man. The Jan 6 prisoners, it was all wrong. The law that was being used to incarcerate these individuals was wrong. I'm like, oh. Anyway, Benny Johnson on the channel. I'm going to put a link in the description below. Like and subscribe to the page. Click the bell icon for more. Go check him out. Great guy. I love me some Benny Johnson. Let's take a listen. His intros are out of control. His intros are out of control. All right, he never misses.
What's up, guys? Your boy Benny. Free at last, free at last. Praise God, I am free at last. Ladies and gentlemen, if there couldn't be enough good news already this week with Donald Trump absolutely bodying Joe Biden in the debate, mogging Joe Biden's chances of ever being considered sentient again, well, here it is. Donald Trump posting today about a massive January 6 political prisoners victory. And this is a huge victory. This is what Donald Trump posted. It is the great Julie Kelly's tweet. I will read it to you here in an easier to read form. Massive victory for January 6 political prisoners in an unprecedented defeat for the corrupt Biden, Merrick Garland DOJ. Supreme Court has overturned the DOJ's use of a article of the criminal code called 1512C2, obstruction of an official proceeding in J6 cases. This means that the Department of Justice has unlawfully prosecuted 350 Americans. This sounds like a really big class action lawsuit. We'll get there in just a second. For their participation in January 6, a flagrant abuse of law to punish those who protested Biden's election and criminalized political dissent. Okay, let's read about what this actual obstruction means. Supreme Court ruled Department of Justice used an inappropriately broad interpretation of a federal statute to prosecute former police officers who were charged because of the involvement in the Capitol riot in January 6, 2021. On Friday, the justices delivered a 6-3 decision in Fisher versus United States, ruling Joseph Fisher should not have been charged with obstruction of official proceeding under the Sarbanes-Oxley Acts. The statute has been used by the DOJ to charge more than 300 defendants with felonies in more than 3 years since the riot. The defendants facing prison sentences of up to 20 years. Wow. Writing for the majority, Chief Justice Roberts says to prove a violation of the statute under the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, the government must establish that the defendant impaired the ability or integrity or the use of an official proceeding of records, documents, objects, or we earlier explained other things used for the proceeding or attempt to do so. Justice Roberts warned that on Friday, the DOJ's broad interpretation of the law to lock up demonstrators presented at January 6th would criminalize a broad swath of prosaic conduct, exposing activists and lobbyists alike to decades in prison. Ooh, baby. Get going. The 1512 provision for obstruction crimes is something that has been totally abused. The case has far-reaching consequences, will go beyond the hundreds of defendants who've been prosecuted in the aftermath of January 6th, now have grounds to appeal the most commonly charged felony from the riot. 2 out of the 4 charges against Donald Trump filed with Jack Smith's criminal probe of the Republican Party are also based on Sarbanes-Oxley statute. Those charges are likely to either be dropped or invalidated by the courts following the ruling. So this is just absolutely and totally massive. Julie Kelly, ladies and gentlemen, who's so good at this and so good at reporting on this, has now effectively won. She's been predicting on our program that this would happen, and what does this mean for January 6 political prisoners? She says it is an irreversible black eye for the DOJ and federal courts in Washington. Effectively, you're going to be having some massive massive rulings, hopefully against the federal courts. Because what if you served years in prison for something that was illegal? Like, what will happen next? So we hope that there is a massive class action lawsuit. You are seeing now some of the people who were charged with this get the United States to suddenly start behaving properly in their trials upon conferral of the government has filed a joint motion to continue my trial due date to today's Supreme Court decision, Fisher versus the United States. It's official. I just spent 3 years in prison for something that isn't a crime. So where does Tim Hale get his lawsuit against the federal government? Text reporting in from J6er says, Julie Kelly, here's one. Our 1512 has been overturned. I am not a felon. This is actually reversing felonies for hundreds of J6ers. For almost 4 years, Biden's extreme DOJ has falsely accused me of a 20-year felony based on their egregious, unbound reading of the law. Many defendants have served time in prison for this charge. Today, the Supreme Court rightly remanded the government for their tyranny. Good. Man, such an awesome result. Marjorie Taylor Greene saying so.
To say I'm very pleased with the Fisher ruling out of the Supreme Court today. And I'm thankful that all of these January 6th defendants who are being wrongfully prosecuted by Biden's weaponized Department of Justice, they will be able to have something on their side finally in their defense against this Justice Department that is persecuting their political enemies. So the Supreme Court got this one right. And what an overwhelming ruling.
And what does that mean for the count against the president on the obstruction charge in Jack Smith's 4-count indictment?
Well, that's certainly in President Trump's favor, while his political opponent, Joe Biden, has his own Justice Department prosecuting him.
So this is actually, all the experts are saying this is going to be really good for Donald Trump. They're just going to drop the charges now. Big win for Trump, says Turley. It knocks out a substantial part of the case of Jack Smith, the former president. It also knocks out hundreds of convictions. People will be sprung free from jail. Jonathan Turley.
And do any of the rioters who are in jail today get released because of this?
They very well could be. There's two aspects to this. Some of them were convicted of what is now established to be improper charges. I mean, that hundreds of people were the subject of improper charges by the Justice Department. That includes President Trump, who has not been tried yet. They were also sentenced based on this conviction as well as a mix of other things. So those sentencing decisions now have to be reevaluated. I've said all along that I was surprised by how heavy the Department of Justice went on obstruction. I analogized it to someone going to Vegas and playing roulette but only betting red. Well, basically the court just said red's not a bet. So we've got to go back and look at all of these cases, not just for those who now have these convictions knocked out, but how they impact sentencing. For President Trump, this is a big day. I mean, I've said all along that Fisher needs to be treated as important as the immunity decision potentially for Trump. It basically rips the wings off the plane that Jack Smith is trying to get off the ground in D.C. Now, can he push that plane forward on the running way? I don't know, because if you take this claim out, it's really integral to his entire complaint. I mean, it's hard to see how the complaint holds together if he was excessive and wrong in bringing these charges. So normally you would see a superseding indictment, and as my friend Andy said, but I expect he's going to try to avoid that. But for Trump, what a day. I mean, his nominees put the court over the top in delivering the coup de grace on Chevron, and then they just knocked out hundreds of these convictions.
So Jonathan Turley, one of the most respected legal scholars on earth, saying that this could mean J6ers walk free today. We're going to have to work this through the courts. One of our favorite legal scholars, Mike Davis, saying January 6th political prisoner is a happy man today, Brandon, after the Supreme Court delivered justice in the Fisher decision. Brandon Fellows, a first-time nonviolent offender, spent 35 months in prison after his bogus conviction. F you, Joe Biden. Whoo, baby. And that's exactly what Donald Trump just said at his rally about this ruling specifically. A big, giant F you to Joe Biden. Free the January 6th political prisoners.
But just this happened a few hours ago. The Supreme Court ruled that Biden's Department of Justice has wrongly prosecuted hundreds of Americans for peacefully protesting on January 6th. Those people have been treated so badly, especially when you compare them with people that ripped apart and killed people in Portland and in Seattle and in other places. They have been treated so badly. So we're asking, based on the decision, they should immediately be released, immediately, the J6 hostages.
This is massive. This is huge. What a win for the populace. What a win for patriots. What a win. This is looking good for Donald Trump, like we heard from Marjorie Taylor Greene. Many of the convictions that were brought against him, why they're gonna have to overturn them. Merrick Garland's, the weaponization of the law. What these people have done to average Americans for voicing their opinion. We know there were people that were doing too much on that day, right? But there were people who were just walking by. These were grandmothers. Like, I'm just sightseeing, like they had no idea they were being prepped and set up for prison. That was wrong. And I'm so glad the Supreme Court finally is beginning to realize that something went wrong, and thank God. Why do we condemn the just and justify the guilty in our society? When did we come to a place in this country that people who love their country, who are trying to do what they could do to address the issues of our country, when did we come to a place we begin to criminalize people who just want America to be great again? Why is that a crime? Thank God we still have the Supreme Court, who seems to be the very last trustworthy system that is still pushing back against the abusiveness coming from the Democratic Party. This brings me hope. It makes me smile. I think some people deserve to be behind bars, and these people are running free in our cities. And the people who do not deserve to be behind bars, they are placed behind bars because they did what the government, the Biden administration did not agree with. That was wrong. Thank God for justice. It is a beautiful thing to hear it, to see it. I pray for their freedom, come back and restore, but there's going to be some serious lawsuits. And I pray for that to take place as well, because a change must come. And we know in November 5th of this year, a change will come. Thank you for listening. Have a good one. Bye.